Okay, so the past few days, we've been working with circles and we've been working with completing the square. So now we want to take those two ideas and combine them together. We want to figure out the equations of circles while completing the square may be necessary for them. Let's see when that's going to work out. So let's take a look at our unit. So first thing we need to remember is what is the equation of a circle? We dealt with that back in lesson 12.1. So sometimes circles are not in the right form. What is the form for the equation of a circle? Go. So hopefully you said, oh yeah, I remember that. That was from lesson 12.1. That was that x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That's my equation of a circle. And from there, I can start doing my center, my radius, and all that good stuff. But look at what happened here. My problem is not in that form. My problem looks like this. Now, how do I even know this is a circle? Well, it's got an x squared and a y squared. That lets me know it's a circle. Remember from your algebra class, if nothing is squared, if it's just x and y, and that's it, no squares at all, that's a line. If it's just x squared and y is normal, that's a parabola. But here we've got x squared and y squared. So that tells me I'm going to have a circle. Okay. So couple steps to go through to figure these out. The first step is let's group all the x's and y's together. Okay. So I'm going to set up a grouping of x squared minus 4x plus, group my y's together, y squared minus 14y. And I'm going to move the 17 to the other side. So that's by subtracting 17 on both sides. So far, we're starting to look very similar to what we have in our top here. Okay, I've got x's, I got y's, x's and y's. What's missing though? Well, they're not squared. Okay, they're not raised to a power. Also, remember, h and k should be constants. They should not have a variable with them. So that's where the completing the square is going to come in handy. Now, we do want to make sure that we have a leading coefficient of 1. There's nothing here. There's nothing there. That means that there's a 1 as a coefficient of both of those terms. That's important. If there's not a 1 there, we've got to take care of that. In this case, we're in good shape. So in this case, both have a leading coefficient. I'll just abbreviate that, of 1. Yay. That means I don't have to do any extra work there. We'll look at a problem later on in which I do have to take care of that. But for now, we're going to make that easy. So, got things set up. My leading coefficient is good. Let's look at our next part. We want to complete the square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this line, except I'm going to leave some space. X squared minus 4x, and I need that third term. And then y squared minus 14y, and I need that third term. Okay, so last time we were just completing the square for x's. This time you're doing it for x's and y's. What is the formula for getting that constant, that square constant? Okay, so remember from our lesson 12.2, what is the formula for getting the c term? So hopefully you were able to remember, oh yeah, that was easy. That's where we just took whatever the b term was, divided by 2, and squared it. So that's all I got to do to get my c term. So in this case, for the 4, I'm going to do 4 divided by 2 and squared. Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. I got to remember to also add it to the other side of equals. Okay. Same thing. I'm going to take the 14. 14. Divide by 2 and square it. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49. So there we go. And again, I have to add it to both sides of equals. At this point, we're now ready to do our factoring. Okay. So the factoring is just like what you did last night. We're going to take all of this. I'm going to break that up into a parentheses. Square root of 4 is 2. Sign goes in the middle there. And remember, the sign that we're using is the sign that matches the b term. Okay, so square root of the third term gives me that. I take the sign from the middle term, put it here. So here, on the next one, I'm going to do y I'm going to say, okay, square root of 49 is 7. And I'm going to take the sign of the b term, negative, and square it. And then on this side, I'm just going to add all that together. So 49 plus 4 minus 17 gives me 36. And now we've got our equation of the circle, which means now I could find my center and radius. So you do that. What is the center? What is the radius? So the center of the circle, remember your parentheses, is 2, 7, and the radius is 6. Remember that when we're finding the center, it's already x minus h. So whatever is here without the minus sign, that's my x term. There's minus 7, so I use 7 for my y term. The radius is the square root of this number. So the square root of 36 is 6. All right, so let's try another one of those without all the leading pieces in there, okay? We'll do one more example, and then you'll try one on your own, okay? So first step, well, notice all my leading coefficients in the squared terms are just simply 1, so I'm good to go. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to group my x's and y's. I'm going to go ahead and leave some space when I do that. It saves me from having to write the same thing over and over again. I'll leave some space. Minus 5y, leave some space, and move that negative 16 to the other side, so now it's positive 16. Okay? Easy. Like I said, our leading coefficients are already 1, so I don't have to fix anything there. Next step, find the square constant. So you do that. Find me the square constant for the x term, find me the square constant for the y term. Go. So the square constant for the x term, let's see, I'm going to go off to the side here. 3 over 2 squared. Well, that's just 9 over 4. So that is going to be a 9 over 4. Add it to both sides. When I do the 5, so that's going to be 5 over 2 squared. Well, that's just 25 over 4. So I add that to both sides. Great. So far, so good. Now we just do the factoring. So when I factor this, that's x minus 3 over 2 squared. And this is y minus 5 over 2 squared. And on this side, well, I've got to do some changing up here, okay? Remember that 16, I need to get a common denominator. So I need a denominator of 4. Well, 16 times 4 is 64. So 64 over 4 is the same thing as 16. So when I add all that together, that's going to give me, well, let's change back to the blue. Boop. That's going to give me a 98 over 4. Always reduce your fractions if possible. 2 goes into both of those. So my final equation here is going to be my x's, my y's, and then 98 divided by 2 is 49. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So what are the center and the radius? The center, very easy. 3 over 2, 5 over 2. My radius, square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 2 is just square root of 2. But wait a minute, we can't leave a square root in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply by radical 2 over radical 2. So that's going to give me a radius of 7 square root of 2 over 2. So radius, center. Okay? So hey, fractions are your friends. Work with them, get used to them. They're going to be around forever. There's more fractions than whole numbers. So start working with those. Try one on your own now, okay? So you're going to try to find the center and radius of this equation. Go. So let's run through the steps. Very simple here. Put my x's together. I'll leave some space. Put my y's together. I'll leave some space. Move that 48. There we go. You could write this down. You know what? I'll write it down. Why not? So for the first one, 10 over 2 squared. 10 over 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. Make sure to add it to the other side. Okay. To do the next part, 12 over 2 squared. That's going to give me 36. So I add 36 to this side of equals. Got to add 36 to that side of equals. Keep things up. Keep my equation balanced. So that's x minus 5 squared and y plus 6 squared equals, and when I combine all that together, I get 13. So my center is 5, negative 6. Remember that we have this positive here, so minus a negative is what gives me that positive. My radius, well, that's just the square root of 13. And there's our solution. Okay, doing well. So I said what happens when you have a leading coefficient. So when I look at this problem and I group it, 3x squared minus 30x, and I group 3y squared plus 12y, and then the negative 39 here. So this is where I run into a problem with that leading coefficient. We're going to divide that out. But look at what happens when you divide. First of all, when you're dealing with circles, they'll always have the same leading coefficient. If they're different, it's no longer a circle. And that's a problem for much later in your lifetime. Okay, so they're always going to be the same. So one way to take care of that, one really easy way, is just go through and divide everything by that leading coefficient. And I do mean everything. Okay, so when I do that, this equation is now just going to be x squared minus 10x. I'm going to go ahead and leave some space so I can complete my square. Y squared plus 4y. I'm going to leave some space. And negative 13. We just took a problem that looked way more difficult and made it the same thing we've been doing. That's it. I can complete my square. Half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So you don't need to write that out every time if you're starting to get this. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. Now I got to make sure I add that to the other side too. 25, 4. Now I can complete it. X minus 5 squared, y plus 2 squared, and 25 and 4, and a negative 3, or negative 13, that gives me 16. So my center is at 5, negative 2. My radius is 4. Remember, the square root of 16 is 4, not 8. There we go. All right, so last one. Try that problem. Do it on your own. See what you come up with. So same idea happens. I start to group things. 7x squared minus 70x. 7y squared minus 84y. Negative 252. And now we just need to do that problem. So I'm going to divide everything by 7. I got my calculator here. You can use this calculator. You can use your Desmos. I don't care what you use. But I'm going to take and divide everything by 7. 7, not 2. Make sure that looks like a 7. Okay. So some of this is easy. I can do a lot of this in my head. So that's going to be x squared minus 10x. I'm going to leave some space. Y squared minus, I believe that is 12y. And let's see, 252 divided by 7 is 36. That's going to be a negative 36. And now we just need to complete the square. Half of 10, 5. 5 squared, 25. Add it over here as well. Half of 12, 6. 6 squared, 36. Add that there. So now I'm looking at x minus 5 squared. Don't forget those squareds. Plus y minus 6 squared equals 25. So my center is 5, 6. My radius is 5. Excellent. So not very difficult. It's just combining the two things that we've done. You do need to write this out. Use paper to do this. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes. If you try to start taking too many shortcuts, that's when you make mistakes. Okay? Homework is very simple. It's just a Delta Math tonight. Okay? I think you got to do 6 problems. Be careful. The penalties are on. So you get one wrong, you lose one of your corrected ones. Okay? So double check your work on paper. Don't try to do it all on the computer or in your head. double check your work. If you get it wrong, check to make sure all your arithmetic is correct, okay? Don't just hit again, okay? Good. Try that out. We'll come back on our next lesson and we'll see how you're doing on the next piece, okay? Have a good night.